Interesting controversy with this story. A Duke professor is now coming under fire for some controversial comments that he made about race. 80-year-old Jerry Huff taking to the comments section of a New York Times op-ed on the Baltimore riots. And in his comment, he wrote, quote, "So where are the editorials that say racism doomed the Asian Americans? They didn't feel sorry for themselves," he says, "but worked doubly hard. I am a professor at Duke University," he says. Every Asian student, he goes on, has a very simple old American first name that symbolizes their desire for integration. Virtually every black, he writes, has a strange new name that symbolizes their lack of desire for integration. So that got people talking. David Webb is here. He's the host of the David Webb Show on SiriusXM Patriot and columnist at The Hill. And Leslie Marshall is a syndicated radio talk show host. Both are Fox News contributors. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning, Martha.
So
Good morning.
I've read deeper into his comments here. And David, what do you think?
If he would have stopped before every Asian, he could have actually started a conversation on self-segregation. Look, the facts are in, or the anecdotal points are this. There are many people who use Americanized names from other cultures because their names are hard to pronounce. That doesn't mean it has anything to do with some form of segregation. The black, for that matter, from Africa, they do the similar things where they use an easier name to pronounce in America. It comes from all cultures. He's obnoxious at best because that's what he did, make an obnoxious statement, which is contrast to the other person that we're discussing this morning who took action, the assistant professor, who took action based on what she sees as her way to deal with not going into white-owned businesses.
Yeah, let's bring up Seda Grundy and show what she wrote about that is also getting controversy as people read this. She says, white masculinity isn't a problem for America's colleges. White masculinity is the problem for America's colleges, she says. And she said in another one, why is white America so reluctant to identify white college males as a, quote, problem population? So, Leslie, you know, you've got two professors, one at Boston University. She's an assistant professor. She's coming on board in the fall, I believe, or over the course of the summer soon. And then you have Mr. Huff, who's been a professor for a long time, but he was on leave when he made these comments, although he did identify himself as a Duke University professor. And both universities have reprimanded each of these professors and said that they take issue with their comments. What do you think about all this, Leslie?
Well, first of all, they do have a First Amendment right to their opinion. However, universities get their money from parents like myself that pay a lot of money to send our children to school. These universities also have a certain demographic, whether it be African Americans or Asians, whites, males, females. I think what's interesting here, being from Boston and having been educated there, both for my undergrad and my graduate degree, is the difference between, even though the reprimand, I think perhaps the free flow thinking kind of thing, much like a UC Berkeley out here in California. But there's no doubt, in my opinion, even though they have the right to this via free speech, that for the female professor in Boston, these are both sexist and racist comments. I would go further than obnoxious, as David said, about the Duke University professor, and I would say that it's racism. Although I agree with David that the professor is not correct. There are many people that have a tie, especially after African American became the catchphrase in the black community, to be proud of their heritage. And, you know, African Americans don't need to assimilate. They've been here for hundreds of years, and much different than Asians, they did not come here of their own free will and volition, but by force in chains on ships.
Right. So, you know, just to put in a little more context here, Mr. Huff said that he believes that the sensitivity, he said, I'm strongly against the obsession with sensitivity. The more we have emphasized sensitivity in recent years, the worse race relations have become. And just one more thought from Ms. Grundy. She says, every MLK week I commit myself to not spending a dime in white-owned businesses, and every year I find it nearly impossible. So, you know, Twitter gives, unfortunately, and these comment boxes gives a lot of people opportunities to say things that maybe they would regret later. But David, you know, what do you think about those two sort of edifying statements from each of them.
Can you imagine, Martha, if you or Leslie had made that statement, I refuse to participate or patronize a black-owned business at any given time for a similar reason, what the backlash would have been. This woman took action by her own words. That is reprehensible. But let's have a little bit of real talk about some of the things that have been going on in this country, and I'll give you a personal anecdote. When I got to my college, I was given the option of living in the black dorm because that was supposed to be sensitive to me who wanted to go to college. Instead, I chose the lottery system, which lets me get a roommate at random. I happened to get a white guy, John, who was a great roommate, but I chose that. Who ostracized me were the, quote, African Americans or the blacks on campus, who any black who didn't live on the Black Hall was ostracized. This wasn't too far from Boston, by the way. So what we have seen is a generation of this elitist liberal upbringing that we're going to have some false sensitivity, and that we, for some reason, because of the color of our skin, are a permanent underclass of victims. I'm sorry, I'm not that weak. Neither are most black people.
Good for you. We got to leave it there. Thank you very much, David and Leslie. Great to talk to you both this morning.
Good to see you.
See you next time.